and welcome. I am April and I am an MSW therapist and the founder of the Love and Loss Project, which is an online comfort and inspiration station for people who have experienced the loss of a child, baby, or pregnancy. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about this amazing book that I came across. It's by Kelly Farley and David Dicola, and I actually discovered Kelly's work when I was putting together a resource list for information. I really just wanted to curate basically a really great support list that had people doing really good work and high quality work that I could help connect people to. Because after I experienced the loss of my little one of the things that I encountered was that it can be really hard to find really good, really high quality support when you need it. And so the more time I've spent in this field, I've certainly discovered some good people out there doing some good work. And Kelly Farley is one of them. This book actually really exceeded my expectations, and I'm having him on my show next week. So I'm going to be interviewing him Monday, so a few days from now, Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That is at Blab IM. That's that broadcast medium where people can comment and ask questions and participate. And he and I are going to be chatting then, and everyone is invited to come and participate as much or as little as you choose. You can ask questions, or you can just kind of sit back, grab a coffee, sit with your partner even, and watch the discussion. I will make replays of that available at my lovelostproject.com, and if you're looking for how to get connected to that, you can connect with me through lovelostproject.com as well. So what I want to just talk a little bit about today is basically how you get through the big pain after loss. And one of the things, the similarities that Kelly talks about that was consistent with my experience of loss as well, was the idea of the necessity of making space and time for your grief and for the inevitable process of whatever it is that comes with that. So I just want to read you a piece from this book here. So Kelly says, supporting a spouse or partner through grief is a wonderful and noble pursuit, but it can't come at the expense of your own mourning. Like many fathers, I sincerely wanted to help my wife, but I didn't realize until much later that supporting Christine became something like a project that I wanted to accomplish. More to the point, I wanted to excel at this particular project. It was important to me to be good at consoling my wife. What I was missing in that equation, however, was that attempting to solve Christine's grief was really little more than a wasted attempt at avoiding my own pain. So many of the things I did, renovating the basement, the extra work hours, the fanatical workout routine, were ways of avoiding the hard work of facing and living through the difficult business of grief. I thought I was doing all the right things. I thought I was taking it like a man and staying strong and being courageous by suppressing my emotions. When the first sign of emotion began to appear, if I broke down sobbing or if I experienced an anxiety attack, I fought it with all I had and chastised myself for being weak. I wanted to do battle with these unfamiliar and unwelcomed experiences, and I wanted to win. I was determined to be a good soldier. Bound and determined or not, before long, I was physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted, and I had no reserves left to fight this ugly, new enemy of mine, grief. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it raises a really important point that I think is one of the key aspects of getting through the experience of grief and loss. And that really is accepting the fact that this does need your attention, that what you're feeling is valid and inevitable. And I very much believe in that quote, that which we resist gets stronger. And so when we try to deny, turn off, or compartmentalize our experience, it tends to just come back around and hit us harder and harder until we get it, until we give it our attention. And I know this to be true because before I experienced my loss of my little girl, I had worked for about 10 years as a therapist, as an MSW social work therapist. And I saw this phenomenon play out in people's lives over and over and over again. And so I knew one of my early thoughts when I went through my loss was that whether I deal with this now or whether I deal with this later, I am going to be forced to give this all of my time and attention and my focus, and to make room for the hurt that I have in my life right now. Because if I don't stop and own that and honor that and really deliberately and consciously make room for that in my life, it's going to force its way in the side door, and it is going to take that choice away from me, because it's going to come back in some way or form. And I'd seen this happen in my work with all kinds of trauma, all kinds of devastation, all kinds of hurt and loss and suffering that people live through, is that we can really only compartmentalize it for so long before eventually these things catch up with us and they take us out at the knees. So one of the ways that I did that in my own life was I made a decision to take as much time as possible off of work. And my main motivation for doing that, two things. So one is I wanted to be able to be present and not have to compartmentalize anything that I was feeling, or the grief or the memories or the thoughts or the agony when it did come up. I wanted to be able to be present and essentially be able to ride that wave without having to try to turn it off or shut it down or ignore it because I'm at work and now's not a good time when I'm able to give that my attention. My other motivation is my work as a therapist is essentially I need to be able to be a really good container for other people's pain, and to really have that be the sole focus of my time and attention. And so for me, it was absolutely critical that I took time off until I was able to come back to my work and really be able to be fully present in other people's experience of pain. But just to kind of come back to the personal side of it, people often tell me, well, I can't take time off work. And I really encourage you to think about how true that fact or that thought actually really is. Because no, taking time off work is never a good financial decision, but this is a time where we have to think a little bit about our priorities and what needs to come first and what needs to come second. So even if that's just a few days, even if that's just allowing yourself to take a sick day if you need it, even if that's giving yourself permission to ask someone to help out with childcare if you have other children, so that you don't have to compartmentalize and push aside and function at the same level that you expected yourself to function before your loss. And so I think this idea of really that which we resist gets stronger is really critical to keep in mind when we're going through the experience of loss, because this stuff is valid. It does need your attention. Thank you so much for the hearts. And it is sacred. Your pain is sacred. Your loss is sacred, and it matters, and it is important. And so we don't want to have to just turn off these things or just absorb ourselves in our work or our projects or other responsibilities. And I think that men, what Kelly talks about in this book, which I think is brilliant and point on, this book is actually based on about 200 interviews that he had done with grieving dads. And one of the things that I love also so much about this book actually is that this book connects all forms of child loss. So it doesn't matter whether the baby was in utero, whether the baby was 4 days old, whether it was a 30-year-old that committed suicide. It doesn't matter what form of loss or what age the child was when these dads had their experience of loss. Kelly connects all of these things in one book, and I think that that is so powerful and important because it is all valid. We often in our culture act like or expect that the idea of losing a miscarriage is a little baby in vitro at maybe 12 weeks gestation is less significant and less painful than losing a third grader. And I think that there is no hierarchy of suffering here. There is no hierarchy of pain. When we lose our child, we lose a child. And I think that matters. So I also love how Kelly put this together in this book. So what he also talks about here is from the men's perspective, how they especially get that pressure to compartmentalize, thank you so much, and turn off their pain and to really toughen up and be the strong rock for their partner. And I know from my own experience of loss, and maybe you have encountered this as well, people would often ask my partner, the main question for him was really, how is April doing? And that was often as far as the conversations about his experience of loss really went. There often was not really any follow-up questions with him about how he was doing or what his experience was like of this. All the questions that he encountered and the support that he encountered was really reinforcing and directing him back to the role of supporting me. And I think that that is really unfortunate for men's experience of grief and loss, because as Kelly talks about in this book, it becomes almost really invalidated, right? And it becomes really ignored. And I love how Kelly talks about the idea that as a culture, we're often really comfortable and really familiar with men's anger. That is essentially something that we see a lot of in our culture. We promote a lot of that in our culture. That is something we see everywhere. But to see men's anguish, to see men's tears, to see men's sadness, the devastation, the grief, often there's that message of toughen up, boys don't cry, pull yourself together, you need to be strong for your wife here. And I think that there's really an opportunity lost in that for relationships as well, because it means that men often, not all the times, but often come towards the idea of supporting role as trying to fix the problems, as Kelly talked about here, or trying to help us forget the loss and to move on from it. I often talk to women that talk about the idea that their husband really kind of, or partner really kind of pulls back or pulls away or detaches when she starts to want to talk about the loss of the little one, because there's this real fear that they are going to upset it. People think grieving is a sign of weakness for men. Yes, absolutely. And I think that comes back to that idea that grieving is a sign of weakness for men is very much what comes through here, because it's that idea that men are not supposed to feel sadness. They're not supposed to feel confused. They're not supposed to feel lost, right? In this book, one person even shares the example of men are not even supposed to stop and ask for directions when driving a car and they're lost, right? We have so many jokes in our culture about how even that is violating a gender expectation. And so the idea of asking for help or saying I'm impacted when we experience grief is meant to, I believe that men often are not given permission in our culture for that experience. And even women, I would add, there's often a time constraint on that. So as the mom, we are definitely expected to experience grief and to have our grief be visible in many ways. But even with that, I think we often still have that pressure of it's been long enough now, but how long is she going to continue to be upset? How long is she going to continue to milk this for, right? Is even one of the ideas that people have told me that they've encountered kind of with their friends and family, that eventually they hit this time where it's just supposed to be past tense, you're supposed to be over it. And I don't think that there's such thing ever as over it. I will never be over the loss of my daughter where that doesn't matter anymore, because that's ultimately what we're suggesting when we use that kind of language. I never want the goal to be that I will be over it. I definitely have known that I needed to get through the horror of the agony and the pain and the suffering, because that's not a place that we can live. And I don't believe that that's a place that our little ones would want us to live. But I will never, so we get through the grief, we never get over it. So if you want to check out the interview, I will be doing a live virtual interview with Kelly Farley Monday night. Check out the link, lovelostproject.com. It's going to be through Blab, www.blab.im, Love Lost Project. And you will have an opportunity to ask questions and hear us chat a little bit more about life and love and loss. And I'm so excited to be able to share this with you. So come and check it out, and I will see you next time. It's hard when someone tells you to get over it and they never supported you. Yeah, so, and it's funny, right? Because in various ways and form, that's often the message that our culture gives us and our friends and family give us, even regardless of gender, is it's time to get over it, it's time to move on. And really what I think people often mean is, it's hard for me to watch your pain, or I miss the person that you used to be. Kelly, one of the dads in Kelly's book talks about how he used to have this really close circle of guys that they would get together with. They would go boating, they would do campouts, they would drink a few beers and have fun together. And he started to notice that the invitations weren't coming anymore, and that he would often, hear about things after the fact, and people would say, well, it just came up spontaneously, it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing. And in reality, that might have been true some of the time, but I think it also speaks to the phenomenon that people tend to avoid us, right? It's almost like that idea that people think that loss and miscarriage and baby loss especially is contagious, right? Or that tragedy is contagious. But the other piece around that was this dad talked about the idea that he gets it. He's no longer able to be the really fun guy, the really happy-go-lucky guy at the gathering anymore. And he really kind of couldn't go and do the things that he used to do, which is laugh and joke and be carefree and just let loose on the weekend, because that was really not his reality anymore, at least for that time in his life. And so as a consequence of that, which is really, sad all the way around. So this is Kelly Farley. Kelly Farley and David Dicola. And you can check out Kelly Farley's work actually also too on grievingdads.com. It's one of what I would say, if other people have other suggestions of people that they've encountered, I'm always interested in hearing more, because I also want my website to be a place that saves people time and effort of finding other good things that are out there. But I would say it's one of the very few men's resources that I have found. Perfect. And on top of that, it's actually really good quality stuff. So it makes it worth checking out. So if you have a male partner, or if you're a dad going through it yourself, or if you're just looking to understand a little bit more about the male experience of grief and loss, and baby loss, then come and check out the interview with me and Kelly Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time at www.blab.im.lovelostproject.com. I will see you there. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye.